This is episode 77 of the Wilderness Locals podcast. On this episode, my guests are Kyle Stelter and Greg Rensmaag. Both of them are with the Wild Sheep Society. Kyle is the now CEO, and Greg is one of the directors. They're both great guys and awesome to chat with. I wanted to take a second and give some context here. Wild Sheep Society of BC is the conservation organization of my personal choosing. I think we should support all conservation efforts in BC, but the work that the guys at Wild Sheep Society BC are doing is absolutely phenomenal. Membership is cheap. It's a very active community. They're great folks. They're doing what we need, and they actually really care about all species in BC. The website is wildsheepsociety.com. Memberships start at $60. There's all kinds of different tiers of memberships. In my opinion, it's the absolute best way to participate in conservation here in BC and keep wild things in wild places. And there you go. Back to the show, folks. Thank you. This podcast is brought to you by Kafaru International, the toughest hunting gear on the planet. You still have time to get some stuff by Christmas. Check out Kafaru's quick ship items and maybe give somebody the gift they want. And as always, check out our friends at Just Shooting Arrows, BC's premier archery shop. Yeah, everybody knows Greg already. So Kyle, why don't you introduce yourself? Tell us who you are and what you do.
Yeah, sure. Well, first of all, it's really cool to be here with you. And I know you're also a Life and Monarch member with the Society, so I can't thank you enough for that and putting your money where your mouth is, which is really cool. So in terms of who I am, I won't go too far back, but my day job now is I'm currently chief cook and bottle washer with the Wild Sheep Society BC. The official title is CEO, but basically doing all the jobs no one else wants to do. So
nice.
Yeah, I've been in the conservation community now I grew up on a farm and wildlife and conservation were always front and center of what I did and what I believed in. And, my grandfather sort of lived that, my father did, and I grew up with that. And being on the farm, obviously have a high level of respect for anything living anyway. Mm-hmm. And kind of got away from it, went and did my career as an airline pilot. And then in the last 5 years got pretty active in the conservation community and just kept growing and growing and growing. And it's been primarily volunteer for, those first 5 years. And it goes back before that, volunteer stuff here and there, but never in the same capacity it's been the last 5 years. And then, predominantly with the Wild Sheep Society BC and with the Wild Sheep Foundation out of Montana as well. And then just recently here, through the support of the Wild Sheep Society BC's board of directors, Greg being one of them, and a big part of making all of it happen, there was an opportunity to bring somebody in kind of in a full-time leadership role as the CEO position. So I'm officially on the books, get a paycheck, and certainly not going to retire anytime soon based on that. But I wake up every day doing what I love, which is, it's worth $1 million a year, right? So
that's the dream, man. That's what everybody's chasing, right?
Absolutely. Yeah. So I count myself pretty lucky and get to work with great people in the conservation community, and Greg being one of them. He's been a big part of the society and just in our entire team. I'm on actually 2 boards or involved with 2 conservation communities. I guess I'm not officially on the board with the society anymore, having moved into that, that CEO role. But I also work with the Wild Sheep Foundation. I serve on their board of directors as well, out of Bozeman. So.
Very cool. And I think Corey took your spot when you moved to the CEO role, right?
Yeah. So it's a little complex. We spent a lot of times looking at our constitution and bylaws, trying to figure out how this worked. We had the ability to bring somebody into a leadership role, a management role that was enshrined in our constitution and bylaws. So that was pretty easy to do. We basically drew up, how that was going to work. But then I was serving in a volunteer position as president, so I couldn't do that anymore. It was obviously a conflict. Mm-hmm. So basically what happened is without my input, the board made a decision on hire me. So I kind of told them what I felt I could do in the organization, what I'd like to see for the future of the Wild Sheep Society BC. And then the board made the decision with me recused from that decision. And then after that, of course, there was a vacancy for president. So somebody off the board had to move into that president's role. And then there was a vacancy there and eventually a vacancy on the board as well. So we brought one of the individuals that had run for our previous election in onto the board, and they were all moved into an appointed position until the next election, which will be at our AGM in 22. So
very cool.
Yeah. Yeah. So Corey's the president now, and he's been really, really big part of the society. Him and Robbie were sort of the four founders of the Northern fundraiser and do a great job up there. And Corey's been really instrumental, and he's got a lot of really strong leadership skills and management skills. Yeah. So he's been really, really pivotal in growing the society and sort of helping us build on our foundation over the past 5 years. So it was really cool for him to move into that role and kind of have that voice from the North. We've kind of, really well represented in the province that way as well, right?
Mm-hmm. So he sold me a lucky spotter.
Is that right?
Yeah, it's got some good mojo. It's seen some good animals. So
sweet, yeah, yeah,
that's awesome. So, what for folks? What does that look like? What does it look like to be the CEO of Wild Sheep Society BC? I think, I think I have a rough idea, but I wonder if people at home are wondering what it means, right? Like, what is it you do, Kyle?
Yeah. I get that question a lot from what are you doing right now? Like,
is it from your life or from?
Yeah, well, there's a little bit of that, but that's the thing is, she's always said to me, you spend more time, doing that than your day job before before I was doing my airline career thing. And, so I think she's kind of glad to see that I'm actually getting some remuneration now, because it's like, you're working way harder at this than you were flying airplanes. So what's up with that? But no, it's funny. I joke about doing all the stuff that no one else wants to do. And there's a little bit of that. And certainly, moving into sort of a paid position, you kind of have to, be a bit more committed in the sense that there are things that, when you're in the volunteer spot, you kind of picked and choose what you like to do. And now it's like, no, you have to do all of it type thing. Mm-hmm. So, there's a lot of holes to plug and stuff like that. And, I'm sure you've seen it over the years, Ty, when you have a small organization and then you grow. And if you don't kind of have the infrastructure there's a lot of, holes and a lot of things that can get missed. And, when I came on the board about 5 years ago, we're, around that $250,000 a year mark. And now we're, 1.3 in revenue. And there's a lot of moving pieces now. We've got a lot of volunteers and a lot more, even just our fundraisers. We used to have one fundraiser in Kamloops, and now we've got 3 or 4 a year. So, Greg can attest, just managing sheep counts is a full-time job in itself almost. So, having that support there and just trying to, make sure we're compliant with everything. We're doing everything by the book, and we're growing, and we're making sure that our members are looked after and that there's no real big holes, that everyone's kind of taken care of there. And then the big thing I've kind of articulated when, I was vying for the position is, have a vision, a long-term vision for the society. Because as you know, when you're in a volunteer organization and you're doing these things day to day, you're just trying to get through the day. You're like, oh, well, this membership thing needs to be done. And, oh, hey, we got this fundraiser thing going on over here. And you don't really have the capacity to focus on down the road. So, that's one of the things that I was hoping to bring to the team was to sort of, have a vision down the road. Where do we look like we're going to be in 5 years and 10 years time, and share that vision and kind of work towards that and have that capacity to do it. So.
Well, it's cool that you have that vision, and I mean, it's much like scaling a business, right? You sort of hit these thresholds, and you need the rubber needs to meet the road, and you need somebody there to facilitate that. It sounds like that's what you're doing.
Yeah, there's definitely some of that in the early days. So, hopefully down the road we can look back and go, yeah, this was a great move and what was needed. And I certainly have the passion and dedication and hopefully the ability to back it up. But, I feel really blessed, and I'm really grateful to our board of directors for having the vision to sort of see the need for it and see that, there's an opportunity here to do some really, really good things for wild sheep and wildlife in the province of BC, much needed work. And then our members to, the support we have from our membership, you included, is just phenomenal day in and day out. It's just people are stepping up and wanting to get involved and do the right thing for conservation. And it's just such an honor to be part of that team, right?
Mm-hmm. Yeah, absolutely. I mean, it's the community is super cool, and I'm not sure there's a better conservation organization to be a part of than Wild Sheep Society BC. It's like when you sign up to be a member, or sign up to be a life member or a monarch member, you get that phone call, and it's like it's a pretty cool experience, and you're like, oh man, I'm doing something. I'm doing a thing that actually matters,
Yeah, I think you said it all right there. Is I'm doing something that matters, and you look at just take a look, and don't listen to anything we say. Just look at what we do, and look at what our membership does, and what we put on the ground in terms of conservation dollars and giving back for wildlife. And to me, that's what really resonates. I look at our organization and I see what our members are doing day in and day out, and it's hard not to be excited about that. But I have to say, man, have you been to our show yet? And if you haven't, I'm going to give you a pass because it's been a train wreck the last 2 years. But you got to come to our convention and our sheep show, like the North or Kamloops or one of them. You got to get there.
Yeah, everybody says it to me, and I'm like, I'm a bit of a recluse, man. Like I don't know. I like to hunt by myself. I have a million kids. I don't know. I need to go. I'll go with Ronnie one year.
Right on.
Oh, that's something else. You get in a room full of a bunch of like-minded people, and everyone's pretty open. You feel like you're at home.
That's cool. That's awesome. Yeah, no, I definitely need to check it out. I've only heard great things about it, right?
Well, it's interesting, kind of at the start you were talking about getting into the space, and you just wanted to cut through the BS, right? You wanted like, you just, and that's the cool thing about our show is you do cut through the BS. You get there and, you're talking to like-minded people, and we talk about it as our wild sheep family, right? You're up there with family members, and you guys, like, everyone's so on the same page. And I'd heard this, so like, 7 or 8 or, well, no, it was more than that, like 10 or 12 years ago. Oh my goodness, I'm getting really old here, Ty. But I'd heard that, like, I was like trying to get into sheep hunting, and I'm like, well, where do I go? Like, how do I do this? Like, what do I need? And we didn't have Wilderness Locals as a podcast to go to as a reference. And, now it's a little bit easier because you can tune into a great podcast like this and learn all these things. But back in the day, I don't even think these things existed. So you're trying to figure it out. And one of our directors at the time, his name was Dave Marsh. He's like, go to Kamloops and go to Sheep Show, and then you'll be a sheep hunter. And like, yeah, whatever. It's just a marketing thing, right? And and that my first show, I was like, yeah, these are my people. This is my thing. And it was like right then and there, I was just like, okay, I'm going to be part of this organization for the rest of my life. And it just truly is that vibe of just the same people with the same like-minded perception of what's going on, and just conservation based, and then just and people that love to be out and love to recreate and love to hunt sheep. So yeah, it's very cool and very different, very unique. So yeah, we'll have to try and sneak in one year and see if we can convince you to sneak away.
Yeah, for sure. I mean, that's one thing about the guys at Wild Sheep, like even Greg, as much as I don't know, I was trying to think of something mean to say about Greg, but I can't. Like with all this flood crap going on and everything else, I mean, he's one of the guys that was checking in a couple times a week. Hey, you need anything? Like, it's the Wild Sheep Society is just full of great dudes. Like, you scroll through that member list, and it's like, if you don't know people in it, like, rest assured, it's all cool people, Yeah,
I'm obviously biased, but won't argue with you there.
No, it's great people. Yeah, so we should probably hear a little bit about how you got excited about sheep. Like, we know you obviously dove in head first, and you're the president of Wild Sheep Society, or a CEO now, right? Like, how did what perked your interest in sheep? Like, what made you go that way?
Yeah, it's I'm kind of an adult onset sheep hunter, I guess you could say, kind of like you mentioned with yourself. You didn't necessarily jump into it right when you were a kid, and I was the same. I grew up on a farm in Alberta, so not great eastern Alberta, actually. Not a lot of mountains and not a lot of sheep over there.
A giant mule deer.
Yeah, absolutely. Giant mule deer for sure. Yeah. It's a beautiful mule deer country. That's for sure. And grew up hunting mule deer and whitetails and just, I never wanted to hunt anything else. You'd go out and you'd see a 180 class mule deer and I'd see that right, like outside the season, you'd see it every single day. You'd be going on the school bus to school and you'd be like look at that. Like, it was just normal. It was our way of life. And I just thought that's way wildlife was. And that's kind of one of my motivations for getting into the conservation space is, I kind of took that for granted that, there's always going to be animals on the landscape and there's going to be abundance. But in these last, 10 years in BC, I'm like, yeah, for the Serengeti of the North, we're not that abundant when it comes to wildlife. Right. So that was one of my motivations is I grew up with that and I wasn't seeing it on the landscape like I had when I was a kid. Anyway, grew up doing all that stuff. I shot my first mule deer in my first year. I was 14 years old. My dad took me out. I was in school and the principal comes and knocks on the door and she's like, "Oh, Kyle, can you come here?" And I'm like, "Yeah." And I'm like, "What, death in the family?" I don't know. And she goes, "Yeah, your dad's coming to pick you up." And I'm like, "Oh, okay. Did he say what's going on?" No, he didn't say. So I come, my dad drives up to school. I jump in. He's like, "Get in the truck, son. There's a hell of a mule deer out there. We got to go after him." It's like, yeah. So, that was normal for me, right? My dad was a pretty dedicated hunter and wasn't really a trophy hunter per se, but he still killed massive mule deer just because that's where we lived and whitetails too, some really solid whitetails as well. So I grew up with it, but never had any real interest in anything else. I didn't really know anything else. And one of my hunting partners, he was a sheep guy, Jeff Schlochter. He's at a Saskatchewan now, drop tine outdoors. And Jeff's a great guy and really dedicated hunter. And I hunted with him for years and he'd always kind of go, sheep hunting in the mountains, but he'd never come back with anything. And I'm like, dude, that doesn't work for me. Like when you go out, you got to kill something. I never really got it because I just grown up, killing a deer every year or two of them. Right. So anyway, fast forward, I came out to the coast and didn't really know anyone. And my partner that I eventually hooked up to go hunting with, he was a sheep guy. And he convinced me to go on a grizz hunt with him. So we went and we got drawn for grizz and went twice for grizz, I think it was. And then he's like, "Well, let's go on a sheep hunt." And I'm like, okay. And just totally naive, just absolutely. And so one of my first sheep hunt and it's that old Jack O'Connor saying, and I'm not even going to try it, but once you've done it, you're either a sheep hunter for life or you'll never do it again. Right. And and it was just that first 3 days in the mountains killed me. I thought I was going to die and I never wanted to sheep hunt again. But the second I got back to, civilization, I couldn't wait to go back again. And again, it's about, that said, we had double headers on that first hunt and I killed a beautiful, beautiful, stone ram. And so did my buddy and just amazing memories, like close encounters with grizzly, the whole works, the whole mountain experience. Right. And, so it was the epic sheep hunt of a lifetime. But that said, I just knew I had to do this every day, every year for the rest of my life. So that was the hook for sure. And just loved it and haven't looked back since. So
no kidding. That's for sure a way to set the hook deep, eh? Like the double header full experience. Like, that's the kind of thing that if you read it in a magazine, you'd often think it was made up, right?
Wow, I was just so naive on so many levels. I had a sweater in there that was literally 3 pounds. I weighed it when I got out, and my buddy was like, I told you what they're bringing. He still bugs me to this day about the sweater that weighed 3 pounds. I'm sure my pack was 100 pounds going in, which it was just ridiculous. And it was just, just totally naive. And, and then, that first year, you kind of, after then you figured out like, yeah, I'll never do that again. And I shed 20 pounds quite easily. Right. So
that's crazy.
But I was just so naive, didn't know anything about anything really, like just, mountain glassing or any of the stuff. And I learned so much. He's an experienced guy and just, like anything else, if you get the right person, you learn everything just so quickly. But, I killed a beautiful ram, so we got out and we fly out and then we get to the float operator, and the operator's wife comes out and she goes, "That ram's got to be 40 inches. That's a 40-inch ram." And I'm like, I don't know what that means. Like, I've never heard that term before. And I'm like, I think it's a pretty good ram. Like, I knew it was more than legal, but, just so naive on every single level. And, I had no idea how freaking lucky I was on that first hunt. Right. So now I do that. I've gone 10 times and killed one ram since then, but yeah.
Nice.
So.
Oh, that's awesome. So you, I love that. Like, that has to be like 40-inch ram. You're like, okay, like, nice, good.
Yeah, like 40 was a number that was important. I said to Mike after, I'm like, what is the significance of 40? And he goes, well, that's like, when people talk about 40-inch rams, it's kind of, and then, yeah. Anyway, it was just funny. Yeah. So.
That's awesome. I love it. And stuff's kind of snowballed from there for you by the sounds of it, eh?
Yeah, I love the experience, and that was my draw. But also, I don't know what it is about the conservation side of it really gets me going. Like, that is my mojo, and I think it's just really, again, it comes down to our family and the people that we're associated with, like the good people in the conservation space and the wild sheep community. And don't get me wrong, every species has great organizations doing great work for it, but this one spoke to me, and
do they?
Well. Yeah, but I do think there are a lot of great ones. It's funny in BC though, like there's not, there's the Wild Sheep Society BC. We're kind of the only dedicated one. Like there's other ones like Rocky Mountain Goat Alliance is up here and doing great work, but they're not a BC org. Not that they have to be, but like there's, we're kind of the only dedicated, there was Rocky Mountain Elk Foundation, there was the Mule Deer Foundation, but they've all kind of, I guess, gone away or whatever sort of thing.
They've sort of all just headed back to the US, eh?
Yeah. And I'm not sure of all the politics and the machinations of why that is. But, I do think that, we're very dedicated in looking after wild sheep, on making sure they're on the landscape. And then, lots of people are like, well, I'm not a sheep hunter. I'm like, well, that's the cool thing. You don't have to be. You're going to help, wild sheep are keystone species. If they're healthy, so are other species. You're going to be looking after the frogs and all that other stuff too, right? It's not like just we're looking after sheep. We look after all of it, but sheep is kind of the focus. But if there's healthy sheep in the landscape, there's probably healthy elk and a whole bunch of other stuff too, right? So.
Well, that's why I've tried to explain it on the podcast a bunch of times. Like, you look at your guys' Act Now campaign that we kind of pushed real hard through. I think it was the summer. I don't know when it was. Greg, when was that? When did that start?
It started early this year and then ended in July.
Yeah, there you go. But like
June, sorry.
That Act Now campaign, like often when you talk to people about it, oh, wild sheep societies do blah, 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 and they'd be like, oh, well, I'm not a sheep hunter, I'm not interested in sheep or whatever. And it's like, dude, you don't have to be. Like, there's almost needs to be a rebrand. It's I'm just kidding, but the work that you guys do, I mean, it's far and above anything else that, I mean, I think you can come across in terms of like boots on the ground, actually doing work and actually putting dollars to use.
Yeah, that's the thing, is our members pour a ton of dough in it, and but we're doing everything we can to make sure that money's going on the landscape, which sometimes is pretty difficult. There's a lot of things that we could do a lot more, but trying to get through the regulatory compliance is difficult, right? Like there's so many different, roadblocks out there, and competing interests, and obviously industry, and, government's got a whole bunch of protocols that has to be met as well. It's not like the old days where you could just go out and do the work, right? So, but what was the number, Greg? In the last 20 months, it was $340,000 of our members' money that's gone back on the landscape. And, to me, that's a pretty big number. And I'm really, really, I like telling that story because it's a lot of hard work by a lot of people. And it's been mainly on the backs of volunteers and people that really really care, and they really want to make a difference.
Yeah, it's
awesome.
Quite incredible when you look at our membership and how much money we are able to bring in. Like, we don't have that many members compared to the dollar amounts coming in. So it's incredible.
How many members are there now?
I think Greg,
just over 1,200, aren't we?
Yeah, Greg's the vice chair of membership, so he would know. But yeah, we just cracked through 1,200. So we're pretty small footprint, but long shadow, right? And that's the cool part, is that many members have put that much money on the landscape. And, there's other great organizations doing good work out there, but show me a 1,200 member organization that's put 340 grand on the ground in the last 20 months. It's something that is impressive, and you just got to look to our members for their support and guys like you, right? Like Ty, I know you guys were doing the podcast and you guys had a great podcast, and I know you went out and just anteed up, and that money went on the ground. You made a difference for wildlife, and to me that's phenomenal when I see that.
Yeah, I just for me, I couldn't ever ask people to do something that I hadn't done. And it's just like the Wild Sheep Society is doing the work, I haven't left my couch, so to speak, or I haven't left the podcast studio in my conservation effort. So the least I can do is send some shekels your guys' way, right?
Yeah, but that's the interesting thing about conservation and volunteering, right? Everyone does different things. Like, Greg's got his role in the organization. I've got mine. You've got yours, and your platform and what you're doing. Sharing Act Now and the way you did it. Stepped up. You got volunteers involved or donors involved. You got members involved. It's and that can be as powerful as anything, right? You can't tell me that didn't have an important impact on what we're trying to do in conservation. So, everyone's, people think, oh, well, I don't have the time, or I don't have this, or I don't have that. And, they talk about the 3 T's: time, treasure, and talent, so, there's people there that have tons of time and they can volunteer. They don't need to put the money in. There's people that have a special skill like you that can give back in that way. There's people that have the money and they can do that way. I've got guys that'll call me up and say, Kyle, I'd like to do more. I just don't have time, but I'll give you a crap ton of money. Here's the cash. Just do something with it and make it count. And we need all 3. And if you take one of those out of the equation, it falls apart. Right? It really does. So you really need all 3 T's to make things happen. And if you don't have it, something's going to break down somewhere.
Yeah. Here's an unreal stat. I'm just looking at this right now while we're talking. You said 1,200 members, right, Greg?
Yep.
That means like 531 of them are life members. That's insane.
More than that.
Okay.
I think we're nearing the 700 mark, I believe, right now.
Oh, wow. That's insane. That's more than half then. That's crazy that the membership is just totally dedicated folks, eh?
Yeah, there's a lot of people that are never a member and then they just go all in. They just straight to life, straight to Monarch. That's skip the testing the waters with us.
Yeah, I had been a member for I don't know, half a dozen years or something, I think, before I did it. But kind of as soon as I started really seeing what you guys were doing and really following along, I was like, oh yeah, take my money, let's go.
Well, when we were discussing last time off air before the podcast, but you went straight from a 1-year membership to a Monarch, did you not? You just skipped the whole life member.
I think I was renewing yearly, or I was doing 3. I was either doing 3 years and then I did skip the life member thing and I just did Monarch, but you can do both at the same time.
Yeah, you just had to throw down a bunch of money all at the same time.
Don't tell my wife.
Good on you for that.
Don't tell my wife. We got what do we have to do around here? Something that costs money, I'm sure. So don't tell her. So let's talk Wild Sheep Society then. Let's talk Wild Sheep too. But what's the big Wild Sheep Society focus for? I mean, we're going into 2022.
Well, we got our Wild Sheep Raffles going on right now. That's pretty big for us.
Yeah, but I kind of mean like on the ground. What are we trying to accomplish right now? Like, where are we sending money?
Right now, I believe they're actively along the Fraser. We're capturing.
Nice.
So,
yeah, that's a big project for us. So we, obviously there's all 4 subspecies of wild sheep in the province. There's the two thin horns, stones and dolls, and then we got bighorns and Kellys. And, we try and make sure we spread that money in every single region where there's wild sheep. That's a real important focus for the organization, that we do that. We don't want anyone saying, hey, you're not looking after sheep in our region. If we're going to be a provincial organization, we're going to step up and make sure we're supporting sheep in every single part of the province. But the one flagship project that we're working on right now is exactly what Greg said, is our Fraser River project. And Greg's been a really integral part of that. He's been pivotal in all those sheep counts out there. And we started that project 3 years ago now. And we put about 400,000 into it. Now, collectively, that isn't us exclusively. The society, that has been our biggest fiscal contribution. I think we're up over 100 grand now personally. But what's really cool, Ty, is we've actually seen some really good successes there. So what it is a disease treatment program. On the Fraser, there was 2,400 bighorns, I think, at one point, and there's been a mass die-off in the 90s. Always suspected that was on the back of disease. Always suspected that it was the disease called Mycoplasma ovipneumonia, or MOVI. And of course, they've done they've captured sheep and tested them now. And yeah, in fact, that is the case. And the goal is to restore. So it dropped down to about 800 head on the Fraser from that 2,400. So it's about a third the size, a 60% die-off, which is significant. So through the great leadership of the regional bios and Chris Proctor in the region and a whole bunch of really good people, we've done this project for 3 years, seen some really good success, had some huge buy-in from different sponsors and donors. Wow. Sitka Gear's been part of that. Cabela's stepped in, helped out. Midwest, the Wild Sheep Foundation proper out of Montana has been a big donor and then or supporter of that project. And then Abbotsford Fish and Games jumped on and been very supportive as well. They've committed 20 grand this year. Yeah, exactly. So again, we've got a Lower Mainland Fish and Game organization who's underwater and they're contributing 20 grand to this. Like, just, that to me, that's a wake up call. That says, that when I see an organization like that doing that sort of work, it's just, it tells me we're on to something really good here and really something really special, that we can collaborate on something like that. But anyway, we've done that for 3 years now. And, in the old thought was, we try and treat these animals. We try and see if we can cure MOVI, which there's no cure for it. So what they're doing is test and remove, it's called. Basically, they catch these sheep, they test them. If they've got MOVI, unfortunately, we put the sheep down. Yeah. And the premise is that a growing sheep can survive the winter. With MOVI, but a lamb, what'll happen is they'll be born healthy. They'll catch MOVI. They're super highly mobile and they communicate a lot and they're back and forth. And so the disease spreads like wildfire. And within months, and Greg's seen this on the landscape over and over, the lambs are dead by winter. So if you actually kill the shedders, the active shedders that have MOVI, and get them out of the herd, then there's less MOVI being spread around, and then those lambs. So we've seen in the first year, I think there was a 40 sheep or something. I think it was 40, but anyway, there was 0 lamb recruitment at the end of that year. And this year, this winter, when they did the surveys, they seen, I think there was 40 sheep and there was 21 lambs with those ewes. So just a huge success story. So based on that, our goal is to do the entire Fraser River ecosystem, which we've now committed to another 6 years, which is about a $1.2 million price tag. So nice. That's what we're raising like a mother for, putting a lot of money into it. The society's basically said we'll put 100 grand a year into it, us and funding partners. So that's high on our priority list to get that Fraser River ecosystem up and going. And the thing is that Fraser River ecosystem is, they've taken and transplanted all over North America. As you know, bighorns were, yep. Really, really struggling in there, early in the century. And we've seen a massive rebound of bighorns across North America. And a lot of those bighorns, the Kellys, had come out of that Fraser River ecosystem. So pretty cool story there.
Yeah, super cool. It's a fun herd to watch too. I've definitely seen them out and about. Pretty cool. What are some other interesting projects that Wild Sheep Society has on the go?
Greg, what's high on your radar? I know the Fraser is near and dear to your heart, but what stands out for you?
Actually, here I'm going to rephrase that question, Greg. Okay, when you become a Monarch member, they ask you where you want to shoot your dough.
Where I want to shoot my dough.
Where do you want to shoot your dough? Where do you want to? They ask you where you want to spend your money, right? They ask you what project you want to contribute to. And when they asked me, do you know what I did? I texted Greg.
No.
I texted Greg. I texted Greg and I texted Ronnie. I'm like, hey, what do I say here? So why don't we talk about the what? It's like 4 or 5 different projects, right? There's the Fraser and then a couple others.
And we did capturing and collaring up on Williston this year too. Yeah, and testing. So it's similar to along the Fraser, but there is no Movie up there that we know of yet.
Good,
but the numbers are low there. We were doing a lot of sheep counts throughout the Okanagan too, and there's some issues going on there we got to figure out right now. Aside from the blue tongue, there was already low lamb recruitment. So
yeah,
that one,
and then the Northern Burn projects, right?
Yeah. The northern burns are going. I don't know if you want to say going. We're struggling to get those off. We need some cooperation. So
okay. What are the northern burns like? Maybe we should talk about it a bit.
Well, the big thing that we're running into up there, Ty, is really hasn't been any northern burns. So that's one of the challenges we talked about with, regulatory concerns and issues. So, it's just such a quagmire right now. There's so many competing interests. Obviously, there's industry out there. They're trying to, people are trying to make a living on the landscape, which we understand. But there's this whole caribou file now, and that's kind of conflicting. Caribou are like they're in the radar, and if you do anything that's going to conflict with caribou, as an example, a burn, that burn could have impacts on the landscape that will affect caribou. Typically, sheep habitat is not sort of akin to caribou habitat, but that's one of the challenges we've had. So, we've got a number of burn polygons in the north. We spend quite a bit of money. There's a lot of money that goes into the prescription of the burn, like building the plan. As you can imagine, there's all these different factors that have to go in planning, and you have consultants. Like it's not a guy like me that's going to figure that out. You're going to hire a dedicated professional that's what they do, and they come up with this plan, and then it has to go through all the regulatory approval from the government. So every year we're ready to go with these burn plans, and there's always been something that have blocked us, and it's been regulatory lately. So we have several, and I can't even give you the location. In fact, actually the locations are kind of kept a little bit quiet because
smart.
Obviously if we burn an area and, it's public knowledge, people are going to probably go there because that first year is going to have some really good habitat and probably have, a good chance of getting some animals. So as a general rule, it's kept pretty quiet. But there are several in the north, but we haven't been able to get any of these burns off, and it's been kind of regulatory and government, have been holding us up, unfortunately. So
I heard
it's frustrating.
Members get that info.
Yeah.
just in the Telegram group, we get all the burn info.
That's exactly right. That's the thing. My buddy always joked. He's like, you're the president. You should have all the info. And I'm like, I don't know anything. Yeah, exactly. It's like since I've been on the board of directors, I have not killed a sheep. So and it's not been because I didn't want to. It's just So no, there's no huge. Honestly, like I joke about it, but my first sheep show I went to, I drew a Doll sheep tag, and so did my buddy. And I went to the show, and I ran into a guy there. Didn't know anybody. I walked in and I literally didn't know anyone, but I ran in and I ran into a guy, and I knew him from the internet. He was on like Hunting BC or something. And I'm like, hey, you're Rackmaster, Trevor Carruthers, Rackmaster. And I'm like, and so we got chatting, and then he's like, oh, you got a Doll sheep tag. Okay. And he goes, okay, I got to take you and meet somebody. So he takes me over and introduces me to a guy. And the guy says, go get your map. And so I go get my map, and he puts an X on the map. Like people talk about X's on maps, right? He puts an X on the map, and he goes, that's where you're going to kill your Doll sheep. And I'm like, what? And he's like, yeah.
Was this guy hammered drunk?
He was completely sober. completely sober. Okay. And I'm like, you're joking, right? And he goes like, no. And he goes, and this is how you're going to do it. And he spent an hour talking to me, and I kid you not, I killed my ram like right on that mark. We doubled awesome. On that to 2 doll sheep, and exactly, just so. Anyone that's doubting going to sheep show, go to sheep show. I'm not saying you're going to get an X. I got an X, but you definitely, if you want to learn how to sheep hunt, go talk to sheep hunters, and that's the spot to do it. So,
oh yeah, that's awesome, man. That's so cool that, you got that bit of help and it proved to be true. How often do you get help from guys and it's, a little touch and go.
Yeah, no, exactly. No, it's a pretty cool community in that sense. And, it's certainly not getting X's all the time, but guys are pretty generous and pretty, willing to help you out, especially, when you get up to Kamloops or get up to Northern Fundraiser and you get a couple whiskeys in a guy and there's a few loose lips from time to time. So it's worth buying the odd whiskey up there. I can tell you that right now. So
especially for a limited entry take too, guys might be more willing to help.
Exactly.
You get later in the evening, there's some free flowing information.
I'm there then. Forget me being a little antisocial. I'm in. I just pulled up that list that I was talking about when you become monarch. I have it in my email. It's Northern Burn /projects, Southern Burn /projects, disease research, Society General Revenue, Life Membership Fund, and the Hunter Heritage. Those are your 6 options when you sign up there. I couldn't remember them offhand, so I figured I'd look it up for guys.
Yeah. And some people say, hey, I want this money to go into my region, right? Like a guy in the Kootenays might say, I want this money to go in region 4. And, if we're putting a project on the ground there and we can, we'll definitely that's one of the things we listen to our members like that. Our members, voices matter. We do listen to that stuff. And if we're putting out a survey or we're asking your opinion, we actually take that into consideration. I can genuinely say that we listen to our members, and we are a member-driven organization, and it's really important to us as an organization to make sure that we are doing what our members ask. So if you're going to pony up and you're going to give us $1,500 for wild sheep, and you tell us you want to put it into this project, and if we're doing that project, we're going to do our best to accommodate you for sure.
Mm-hmm. Greg, I think I asked you this when you and I did the podcast. So Kyle, I'll ask it to you. What's the big risk for sheep in BC? What's the thing that's going to hurt sheep the most?
Ty, that's a loaded question, and the answer is what isn't. But I think we could say, certainly for bighorns is disease. Disease isn't for thin horns right now, but it certainly could be. And if we ever have a disease event in northern BC, oh my goodness, like that's our worst nightmare. But disease certainly in the south is certainly huge. But there's all this other stuff going on. Predation's up there high on the list. Habitat loss, industry. And I think for our thin horns, there's a lot of pressure up there, like with industry and stuff like that. So I think though, like if you had to single one thing out, it'd be disease. And the thing is, the disease is so complex. It's so challenging to fix. And there's no silver bullet. Like with habitat, let's say you said, okay, well, if we just need to fix the habitat in the Kootenays as an example, that's something you can, or predators. So we got to do something with predators. So, okay, we'll reduce the predators. But with disease, it's not that simple, and one sick domestic sheep can destroy an entire herd, right? So it's, I think disease will remain high on the priority list for us for a long time. And, we'd love to be transplanting sheep all over this province. There's a lot of great sheep habitat out there, but the disease issue is so rampant and we haven't got a handle on it. And you can't take an unhealthy sheep and put it into a new habitat. It's just going to fail there too, right? So you don't want to put these resources into something there. So yeah, I'd say disease is high on the list, but every single region has its woes. And like we see what's happening in region 4 now with what's going on there, the LEH and stuff like that. Disease is part of that problem for sure, but it's not the only problem. There's a lot of habitat issues in there. There's predation. There's the biggest thing is there's not a lot of escape terrain for a lot of the sheep. They got nowhere to go, right? So they get pressured, and then there's this tiny little, not area that's not connected to anything. There's no connectivity, and they can't go anywhere. So it's a real big issue for the Kootenays. So.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, we should talk about the Kootenays LEH a little bit and sort of what you guys think and what's going on down there.
Greg, you want to jump in on that one?
Well, that's a tough scenario. I think the connectivity is an issue. The industry access to the sheep is one thing that is top on my list when I look at it. Is there's a lot of easy access, a lot of roads, and the sheep tend to be in small pockets there. So if you know where they are, you're gonna do all right. There's some guys in the Kootenays that tend to hammer sheep every year because they know where they are. You can drive up the road and walk over to them almost. I don't know, that to me that's the biggest issue over there right now.
Yeah, it's tough one, Ty, because the government's looking at it and they're very, very serious about putting on LEH. That's definitely probably their highest priority right now is to put on LEH. There are a number of alternatives to LEH, which, we've been advocating for. We would love to see this implemented a long time ago, a number of these alternatives. But our biggest thing is that we've always stated, and we continue to state here, is that there's all these other issues that are really the root problem there, like we talked about, predator management, loss of connectivity, industry, disease. And, if you try and handle it in isolation, just go to LEH, you still haven't fixed the problem. And I had a meeting with an government official last couple of weeks ago, and I said, so if you put on LEH, are you going to fix it? Are you going to solve your population management issue? And the answer was no. And I said, well, then you can't do it in isolation. If you're really concerned about it, why don't you fix the issue? Why don't you go and say, and so where it becomes challenging is these are wildlife managers that put these regulations in that put sheep on LEH, and that's their only lever, their one and only lever. But the reality is that, forestry and mining should be doing their part. Agriculture should be doing their part around the disease part. We should be removing predators in high predator rich environments. So there's all these other pieces that need to be dealt with, and they're not being dealt with. And that's kind of our biggest thing is that, we as consumptive users know we have a responsibility in the landscape. We get that. And I don't know any hunter that said, I just want to kill everything until it's gone. I just, that's something I don't hear. And maybe it's because of the community we're in. Maybe it's because we're conservationists. But I really think as a general rule, hunters don't have that mentality. They want to see animals on the landscape. They want to see a lot of animals on the landscape. So I don't think there's anyone there that has that mentality that they just want to hunt them until they're gone. But they also believe, like I do, and I think our members do, is that, fix the problem. Like, go and fix the issue, the root problem, and don't try and just, take hunting out of the equation, which is not going to fix the problem. And there's numerous examples of that where that has been the case. They've put animals on LEH and they haven't done anything with the habitat or the root cause of the issue. And you know what? It's on LEH and they haven't improved. There's still low numbers or lower numbers because they still haven't fixed the problem, right? So that's one of the things that we have an issue with and we're kind of advocating for is like, okay, you're telling us we need to do our part. Okay, fair enough. But you need to do your part too. And that's not happening. So.
Yeah, it's kind of interesting how I mean, the further you dive down the conservation rabbit hole, the more you become acutely aware of the politics involved in wildlife management, and there's it's funny. I don't think it's a new issue in the province. I got the book somewhere on my desk here, but I read a book recently about grazing associations through the 1950s, 60s, and 70s, and it's interesting, that they were lobbying for different hunting seasons and this and that because it changed the carrying capacity of the land for cattle. It's like none of this stuff is new. And I think, like you're saying, everybody wants this stuff to remain on the landscape for a long time or forever.
Yeah.
And how do you get there without solving the problems, right?
Yeah, and it is frustrating to me. I look at, we can't even take all of our tag sales and put them into, habitat or to wildlife management. It's to me, that's pretty frustrating. And I really think our system in BC is broken. And then this is not political. I'm not pointing fingers at the NDP or Liberals or any political party. It's just broken. And I think they all have a role to play in it. I'm not going to point at any one particular party, but you look at jurisdictions in certain areas where, they have proper funding models. Like in the States, they have Pittman Robertson, and they have a whole bunch of other, systems that work. And, we really have to change our mentality in BC. I was just on a call the other night with the Minister's Wildlife Advisory Committee, and it's part of this new Together for Wildlife strategy that the province has put together, which is a good idea in principle if it's executed properly. And one of the gentlemen said on there that we need $160 million for wildlife management in British Columbia is our annual budget to do what we need to do. And right now we're spending about $34 million. Oof. So do the math. We're not even a quarter where we need to be. If you look at states like Oregon and Washington State, they're well over $100 million a year, much smaller land base. And hey, their wildlife tend to be doing pretty well. Wonder why? You have to invest in your wildlife. We've always been beautiful British Columbia, Serengeti of the North, and the pops just keep dropping. We've seen that. Like there's statistics to prove that. I'm not saying anything that's controversial here. And if we don't start investing and we change the way we're valuing wildlife, we're just it's not gonna change, right?
Mm-hmm. There was a graphic circulating social media, and it was like states by land size versus budget of wildlife management, and BC has all the species but none of the budget. Then there's a ton of places that had all the budget and had like white-tailed deer. It's pretty shocking. Greg, you probably saw that one, eh?
Yeah, I seen that. It's just shocking is an understatement for that one for sure. That's
make you fall out of your chair, man.
Some of these states that are a fraction of British Columbia and their budget compared to ours, and we have more population, and it doesn't add up. It's a scary thought.
Okay, so here's the big sell. Here's the art of the deal. Here's how we tie this all together, Kyle. How does somebody, with our system being broken in BC, how does somebody put their dollars to use and put their time to use and maybe get involved with some organization to start moving the needle the right direction?
Yeah, that's a great question. I think the very first thing, Ty, above anything, is just make sure you get involved. If you're sitting on the fence and doing nothing and you got your thumb up your bum, you're doing something wrong. Like, you need to look at yourself. And this isn't even a Wild Sheep Society BC pitch. There's a lot of great fish and game clubs. There's a lot of great orgs in this province. And maybe you're not even from BC. I know you have a broad listening base.
Yeah.
Just get involved. And and we talked about 3 T's: time, treasure, talent. It doesn't have to be money. Maybe you don't have any money. Maybe you have time. Maybe you got a lot of money and no time. Or maybe you have a special skill. Maybe you're a podcaster like Ty and you can reach the world and make a difference there. So, the key there is get involved. And we have to put wildlife as a priority, and we have to back it up with one of those 3 things. You got to get involved in some capacity, whether it's your money, your time, or your skill. And all of us have the capacity to do that. It's not earth shattering. And I'm talking like an hour a month or an hour a year, if that's all you got, but get out and get involved. And, you think, oh, well, what can I do? Even just signing up as a member for an organization. If you can imagine like the work we do now, and I go into the government and I meet with, for example, the minister, and I say, we've got 1,200 members, and and the minister goes, okay, 1,200 members, that's 1,200 votes. That's the way it works. It truly does. But if you show up and you say, yeah, we've got 30,000 members that feel this way, there's 110,000 hunters in British Columbia. Do you think if we had 110,000 people saying, we're going to vote for the party that's going to invest 140 or 160 million for wildlife, do you think that wouldn't have an impact if they had 110,000 votes? Maybe it doesn't. I don't know. I think it would, but we've never done that. But if we stood together as a wildlife conservation group of dedicated hunters that really care about wildlife and said, we're going to vote for the party that's actually going to look after wildlife and make a difference this time, I think that it would be impactful. But the problem is with Act Now, we say to people, get involved. We got 1/5 of the population. We got 20,000 members. We put over 100,000 letters to the government out there, but it was 20,000 people that did that. Where was the other 80,000? That boggles my mind. And it costs people nothing. It costs them like the 30 seconds online. And maybe we're not reaching them. Maybe they're people that are disconnected. So I'm not, if you don't know about it, how can you be guilty? But I think if we all stood and actually showed that we cared and actually, committed in some capacity in one of those three areas, it would make a huge difference.
Absolutely. I think that's, man, that's that is where the rubber meets the road, right? Being if it's more than a hashtag, you have to kind of do something.
Mm-hmm. Yeah,
and the Wild Sheep Society does have a membership drive on right now till the end of the month too, so that helps.
There you go. I heard we were gonna get you in front of a Cabela's with a bell and a Wild Sheep Society hat, Greg.
I'm okay with that.
It's December. It's Christmas.
He'll dye his beard a little whiter.
Dude, that's the hot ticket.
He'd look come and be one of the elves would be good.
I could probably be an elf. Me and Jeff, a couple of guys that are under 5'10", it'd be good.
There you go.
Yeah, sign here, join Wild Sheep Society BC, get your picture taken with Greg. I mean Santa.
Yeah, I'm okay with it.
Oh man,
that's awesome.
Is there anything else we want to cover, boys, or did we run the gamut?
I
think we have, but I will do one last pitch for the society. I think we do a great job of putting money back in the landscape, looking after wild sheep and other species. We are not, sheep specific. When wild sheep are doing well, the other species are doing well. And like I said, if we can show up in front of the minister and say we've got 30,000 members, it's going to be, much more impactful and give us a stronger voice. So, our memberships are as cheap as $55 a year. Like Greg said, there's a great membership drive going on right now. You can win a $900 backpack from Stone Glacier just by signing up. So get over to wildsheepsociety.com and we'd love to have you part of the team. And that's one thing is membership matters with us. We listen to our members. You are going to have a voice. We are going to listen to you. And you drop your $55, you can call me up and you can complain to me all day and I'll listen. And we'll do whatever we can to do the best we can for wild sheep and wildlife in BC.
That's awesome, man. That's so cool. It's so cool that it's such an active group of folks that actually care. And when you call, somebody picks up the phone and man, I don't think it gets any better.
Yeah, that's cool. Yeah, we got a pretty good group of people. That's for sure. I have to say that, the strength of our org for sure is our members. There's no question about it.
And the other thing that I said it earlier in the podcast, it's just because it's Wild Sheep Society. And like you said too, it's if sheep are doing well, all the other species will be doing well too. You don't have to be a sheep hunter to get involved. I mean, I've spent very little time hunting sheep. In fact, I've only spent time looking at them without even considering hunting them. So there you go.
Got to get you out there. Got to get you chasing some sheep and get you kicked out of the Less Than One Club.
Yeah, I'm sort of. I said this on a podcast recently. I'm at the point in my sheep evolution where I'm happy to look at them from a good distance and just keep trying to age them correctly, and we'll go from there. I think I'm a year or two away from even considering chasing them, but
education is important.
We'll get there. Absolutely.
Yeah, hats off to you.
Your stick and bow.
I don't think so for sheep, man. My one of my best friends, Hart, he took a stone with a compound a couple of years ago, and he's like one of those he's just a super good, talented hunter, but he doesn't know it. And so he's like, "Oh yeah, I killed a stone this year with my bow, no big deal." And like that's how he says it. He's just like he does. Like you're just a dick, man. Just a dick. Asshole. Cool.
Yeah, that's cool. Yeah, awesome.
Right on, boys. Okay, well, hey, I'm gonna actually hang on one sec. How does somebody find Wild Sheep Society? I missed it. I forgot to plug the website.
Go to www.wildsheepsociety.com.
Perfect.
And everything you need to know will be there.
Yeah, sign up and do all that kind of stuff. Go Life member. That's the way to go.
Yeah, sign up, buy some raffle tickets, maybe pick up some swag for Christmas, all the good stuff, right?
Yeah, actually, Greg. Before I let you guys off here, tell everybody about the raffles because they're super cool, and I like winning stuff.
Our big bore raffle for a 280 AI rifle, the Leopold VX3 scope just sold out. So thank you to everyone that bought tickets for that. And then we got our wild sheep raffles on the go right now, which will be drawn in early March. You get Desert Bighorn up for grabs, grizzly bear hunt in the Yukon, Texas Oodad, pronghorn, or an ultimate sheep camp from Barney Sports Chalet.
Cool.
And that'll give you everything you need to become a sheep hunter if you win the sheep camp.
There you go. Right
it's
on.
Actually, those are perfect stocking stuffers, right? So when you're listening to this podcast on the 24th and you're like, holy shit, I forgot to get grandpa a gift. Go over there and you can buy the ticket, print it off, and bang, in the stocking, done. Christmas is over. So that's going to be a lot of people's saviors. And you have no idea how many tickets we sold out last week. It's exactly what's happening. People are like, they're forgetting. And then, I have to say on our marketing side, that's one of the things. So like, the week before Christmas, we'll push this pretty hard because there's going to be those people like me that forgot and you're out. Yeah. So, but we don't have any diamond rings. So if you're buying something for the missus, you might want to keep that in mind. So
yeah,
I'm definitely guilty of buying raffle tickets for people last minute.
It's like, I don't even hunt. You're like, give it to me if you win. Bye.
Yeah, exactly. I'll take that bighorn hunt.
I'll be in front of Cabela's with my bell. Right on, boys. That was fun. I appreciate you coming on, Kyle. Greg, it's always a pleasure.
Thanks for having us.
Thank you, Ty, and thanks for all you do, man. It's just a pleasure to be on here, and appreciate you as a member and all you do, and thank you for your support. It definitely does not go unnoticed, so we appreciate it.
Yeah, man, I'm stoked to help.
Awesome.
Thanks for listening. If you enjoyed the podcast, please subscribe and leave us a review. You can follow us on Instagram at Wilderness Locals. If you want to support the podcast, please check out the gear, articles, and whatever else we're up to on the website at www.wildernesslocals.net.